Now that I have my rocket silhouette created and the majority of the high poly modeling completed, which was all done in the pieces layer using the tricks that I covered earlier in the course, as you can see here. Let me start off demonstrating how I created this mini thruster within the HP detail layer. I'm going to unhide the HP detail layer, make that layer active, and close the Explorer. Now I'll zoom in by pressing Z. As you can see, this is the finished product, a high poly mini thruster. Let me show you how I went about it. I'm going to turn on View Edge Faces. So here's the thruster base. Basically, I started with a cylinder and then extruded edges to create what we have here. To show how I did that, I'm going to detach a lot of the middle polys to demonstrate. So I'll select this front. I'm going to hit Grow. Grow my selection. And now I'm going to right click and go to Detach. I'll name that Object 179 for now. Also, you can hit Detach on the Edit Geometry panel over here. So let me move the middle out of the way. And selecting this middle piece, I'll show you how I went about it. I selected the border, and then utilizing Shift and Drag, I'm able to create different geometry and adjust it how I want it. Using this technique, I was able to get a high poly version of what we see over here. Of course, it's a little bit different. Once you get in, you can go down as well. So I'm going to undo all that, bring back our middle, reattach them. And so now I'm going to go over how I created the little mini meshes within this thruster. I'll start with this little square here. I'm going to zoom in by pressing Z and then zoom out a little bit so we can see. Now, obviously, I've already got them placed around here, so I want to select this and delete them so I can go over this process and it'll be new to you. I'm going to select them and delete. Now, with this guy, I modeled this groove into him, and then I placed a double turbo smooth on top to see how he looked. I was happy with that. So I'm going to take the double turbo smooth off and make an instance and drag him straight on over where I want to put him. I'm going to make sure that it's an instance so that whatever is done to the one on the left affects them all. Now I have it placed somewhere close to where I want it. I'm going to adjust the pivot point so that when I rotate it, it will go around in a complete circle. So the first thing I want to do is set the pivot point so that it is the same as the base here. I have a hotkey set for this, but to do so, you come over here to the Hierarchy tab, turn on Affect Pivot Only. Now I'm going to align the pivot point to our base thruster. Make sure that it's in the X, Y, and Z position and hit OK. I'm going to turn off Affect Pivot Point, and I'm going to rotate him about 15 degrees to the left. Now I'm going to copy this guy all the way around this base thruster using instances. So holding Shift, I'm going to drag about 45 degrees, make sure to set the instance, and hit the number of copies up to about 7. Now I have them exactly where I want them. If there's anything that needs to change on these guys, I can just adjust this one right here. So when I place the double turbo smooth on top, you'll see them all be affected. Using that technique, I do the same for every other piece that comprises this little mini thruster, such as this fin. So using this method, I did that to each individual piece of the mini thruster to get the final look that we see right here. Now is the time to take into account the multiple reads of our prop, the large read, the medium read, and the close read. So I'm going to zoom out so we can see it. We want to make sure that from each distance, there's just enough detail to be able to tell what we're looking at and not get too distracted. The large read should give some slight interest to the viewer while not overburdening the eye with too much detail. So if I hide these thruster pieces that we just worked on, I can zoom out a little bit and you can see that it's not noisy to the eye. The closer you get to the object, the more detail you should see. So the medium read, we get to see these ribs, we get to see these rivets and bolts and other types of details. And the closer you get, you should see more, such as these mini thrusters, the tubes, and bolts. Some of these things, such as seams, dents, or scratches, can also be created within Substance Painter. I'll review that process later on. Now that we've finished off the high poly model with the necessary detail, we can move on to the low poly modeling process.